The lower decks of orbital station Kepler 9 were always cold. Pipes ran along the walls like metal veins, carrying water and fuel and air to the thousands of beings who lived above. Down here, in the belly of the station, the lights flickered and the machines hummed their endless songs. And down here, a woman named Una worked alone. She was not young anymore. Her black hair had threads of gray, and her face carried the weight of years. Her hands were rough from work, and thin white scars ran along her arms like old rivers on a map. She wore the gray uniform of a maintenance worker, and she moved through the dark corridors like a ghost. Una had worked on Kepler 9 for 3 years. In all that time, she had made no friends. She ate alone. She worked alone. She returned to her small quarters alone. The other workers whispered about her sometimes. They said she was strange. They said she never smiled. They said her eyes looked empty, like windows into a house where no one lived. But Una did not care what they said. She had come here to disappear, and she had done exactly that. The station itself was a place of mixing. 20 years ago, humans and the Vec had fought a terrible war. The 30-year War, they called it. Millions had died on both sides. Cities had burned. Worlds had fallen. But in the end, neither side had won. They had simply grown too tired to keep killing. A peace treaty was signed. The guns went silent. And now, humans and Vec lived side by side, pretending the past did not matter. But the past always mattered. Una knew this better than anyone. On this day, she was repairing a broken conduit near the Vec living quarters. She knelt on the cold floor, her tools spread around her fingers working with steady skill. She did not look up when she heard heavy footsteps approaching. She did not react when a shadow fell over her. "Look at this," a deep voice said. A little human, crawling on the floor like an insect. Una kept working. She did not raise her head. The voice belonged to a Vec warrior named Drell. He was tall, even for his kind. His skin was covered in dark green scales, and his yellow eyes burned with old hatred. He wore the uniform of a security officer, but everyone knew he had been a soldier in the war. He had killed humans, many humans, and he was proud of it. "Do you not hear me, insect?" Drell leaned closer. His breath was hot and smelled of metal. "When a Vec speaks, you should listen." Una tightened the bolt. Her voice was soft and flat. "I hear you. I am working." Drell laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Working. Yes, this is all your kind is good for now. Fixing pipes. Cleaning floors. Serving your betters." He kicked one of her tools, sending it spinning across the floor. During the war, humans thought they were warriors. They thought they could fight us. But they were wrong. They were always just prey. Una said nothing. She reached for another tool and continued her work. Drell waited for a reaction. He wanted fear. He wanted anger. He wanted something. But Una gave him nothing. Her face was blank. Her hands were steady. She was like a stone. Finally, Drell spat on the floor near her knee. "Pathetic," he said. Then he walked away, his heavy boots echoing in the corridor. Una finished her repair. She gathered her tools. She wiped the spit from the floor with a rag, and then she moved on to the next job. This became a pattern. Every day, Drell would find her. Every day, he would mock her. He called her weak. He called her prey. He knocked tools from her hands. He pushed her against walls. Once, he grabbed her arm so hard, it left bruises shaped like fingers. And every day, Una said nothing. She did nothing. She simply waited for him to finish, and then returned to her work. Other humans on the station noticed. Some felt shame. Some felt anger. But no one did anything. The Vec were stronger. The Vec were in charge. And the peace was fragile. No one wanted to be the one who broke it. But one young man could not stay silent. His name was Taiao. He was an engineer, barely 25 years old. He had been born after the war ended, so he had never known the killing. He had only known the uneasy peace. And he did not understand why the older humans accepted so much cruelty. One evening, he found Yuna sitting alone in the cafeteria. She was eating a simple meal of rice and vegetables. Her eyes were fixed on the table in front of her. "Excuse me," Taiao said. He sat down across from her. "I have seen what that Vec does to you. Drell, I have seen how he treats you." Yuna did not look up. "Have you?" "Yes, and it is wrong. I want to report him to the station command. He cannot be allowed to. No." The word was quiet but firm. Yuna finally raised her eyes. They were dark brown, almost black, and there was something in them that made Taiao stop talking. Something old, something heavy. "Some fires burn out on their own," Yuna said. "Others need to be smothered. This one is not worth my breath." Taiao frowned. "But he hurts you. He humiliates you. Pain fades. Words are just air." Yuna returned to her food. "I have survived worse than a loud fool with scales." Taiao wanted to argue, but something in her voice told him not to push. He nodded slowly and left her alone. That night, Yuna sat in her small quarters. The room was bare. A bed, a chair, a small table. Nothing on the walls. Nothing that showed who she was or where she came from. She reached under her bed and pulled out a metal box. It was old and dented, and the lock was rusted. She opened it slowly. Inside, there were 3 things. The first was a medal. It was made of dark red metal, shaped like a star, the highest honor a human soldier could receive. The second was a photograph. It showed 14 soldiers standing in front of a burning Vic warship. Their faces were young and proud. Most of them were smiling. Yuna was in that photograph. She was not smiling. The third thing was a knife. A combat knife with a black handle. Along the handle, someone had carved small notches. Yuna ran her finger along them. She counted in her head, though she already knew the number. 40-7 notches. 47 kills. And those were only the ones she had counted. She closed the box and pushed it back under the bed. Then she sat in the dark and stared at the wall. Outside, the station hummed and breathed. People laughed and argued and lived their lives. They did not know that a ghost lived among them. They did not know that the quiet woman who fixed their pipes had once been something else, not something terrible. Something glorious. But Yuna knew. And every night, she tried to forget. The weeks passed slowly on Kepler 9. The station turned in its endless orbit around a distant star. Ships came and went. People lived their small lives. And the harassment continued. Drell had found a new hobby. Every day, he searched the station for Yuna. Every day, he found new ways to hurt her. He was no longer satisfied with words alone. Now he wanted to see her bleed. One morning, he shoved her into a wall as she walked through a corridor. Her shoulder hit the metal hard, and pain shot down her arm. She stumbled but did not fall. Drell laughed and walked away. The next day, his friend Kova tripped her in the main hallway. Her tools scattered across the floor. Her knee hit the ground, tearing the fabric of her uniform. Blood seeped through. The 2 Vec warriors stood over her, their yellow eyes full of cruel joy. "Look at the little human," Kova said. "So clumsy, so weak." Yuna gathered her tools without a word. She did not look at them. She did not speak. When she stood up, there was blood running down her leg, but her face showed nothing. Drell leaned close. Why do you not fight back, little prey? Are you broken inside? Did the war take everything from you? Yuna met his eyes for just a moment. Then she turned and walked away. That night, a trade ship arrived at the station. It was a small vessel, old and worn, carrying goods from the outer colonies. Among the merchants who stepped off the ship was a woman named Bora. She was older than Yuna, with gray streaks in her black hair and deep lines around her eyes. She moved with a slight limp, and her left hand was missing 2 fingers. But her back was straight, and her gaze was sharp. Bora walked through the docking bay, checking cargo lists on her tablet. Then she stopped. Her whole body went still. Across the bay, Yuna was working on a loading crane. She wore the same gray uniform. Her hair was tied back. Her hands were busy with wires and circuits. Bora stared at her for a long moment. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then she took a step forward. Yuna looked up. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. A recognition. A shared memory of fire and blood and screaming. A bond that could never be broken, forged in the worst war humanity had ever known. Yuna gave the smallest shake of her head. A warning. Not here. Not now. Bora understood. She turned away and continued checking her cargo. But her hands were trembling. Meanwhile, Taiho had become curious. He could not stop thinking about the quiet woman who fixed pipes. There was something wrong about her. Something that did not fit. Maintenance workers did not have eyes like hers. They did not move like she moved. They did not accept pain without flinching. So he searched. He accessed the station's personnel database and found Yuna's file. It was almost empty. Name, Yuna. Age, 52. Job, maintenance technician. Previous employment, classified. Military record, classified. Medical history, classified. At the bottom of the file, there was a clearance level. Taiho had to read it 3 times before he believed it. Admiral-class. He had never seen that. Clearance for anyone below the rank of general. Why would a maintenance worker have Admiral-class clearance? What was she hiding? He dug deeper. He used every trick he knew. Finally, he found a single fragment of information that had not been erased. Attached to 7th Assault Division, Earth Defense Corps. Status, classified. Taiho sat back in his chair. His heart was beating fast. He had heard of the 7th Assault Division. Everyone had. They were legends. They were ghosts. They were the soldiers who had done the impossible during the darkest days of the war. And Yuna had been one of them. The next day, something happened in the main concourse. It was the largest open space on the station, filled with shops and restaurants and crowds of people from many species. Humans, Vec, and others all walked together under the great domed ceiling. Yuna was crossing the concourse on her way to a repair job. She kept her head down, trying to be invisible. But Drell had been waiting for her. He stepped into her path. Kova appeared beside him. And behind them, a group of Vec warriors gathered, their scaled faces twisted with ugly smiles. "Little prey," Drell said loudly. His voice echoed through the concourse. People stopped and turned to watch. "I have been thinking about you. I have been thinking about how your kind used to pretend you were strong. How you used to believe you could fight us." Yuna stopped. She did not speak. Drell grabbed her wrist. His grip was like iron. "But the truth is, you were always beneath us. You were always weak." He forced her down, pushing her to her knees. "And this is where you belong. On your knees, bowing to your betters." The crowd watched in silence. Some Vec cheered. Some laughed. The humans looked away, their faces filled with shame. No one moved to help. Yuna knelt on the cold floor. Her wrist burned in Drell's grip. But her face remained blank. Her breathing remained steady. She did not struggle. She did not cry. Drell stared down at her, waiting for something. Tears, begging, fear, but there was nothing. Her eyes were empty windows. Pathetic, he spat. He released her wrist and stepped back. You are not even worth killing. You are already broken. He walked away. His warriors followed, laughing among themselves. Yuna stood up slowly. She rubbed her wrist. Then she continued walking toward her job. From a balcony above, Captain Hyunwoo watched the scene. He was the commander of the station's human security force, a man of 50 with a soldier's bearing and careful eyes. He had served in the war too, though in a different unit. He had seen enough combat to recognize certain things, and he recognized something in Yuna. She was not broken. She was not weak. The way she stood up, the way she walked, the way she held her body even after being humiliated. It was control. Perfect, terrible control. Who are you? Hyunwoo muttered to himself. What are you hiding? That night, there was a knock on Yuna's door. She opened it and found Bora standing in the corridor. The two women looked at each other. Then Yuna stepped aside, and Bora entered. The room was small and bare. Bora looked around, taking in the emptiness. No pictures. No decorations. No signs of life. Just a bed and a chair and a table. You live like a ghost, Bora said. Maybe I am one. Bora turned to face her. They do not know, do they? These people? These Vec. They have no idea who you are. Yuna sat down on the edge of her bed. Her shoulders were tired. No, and I want to keep it that way. Why? Bora's voice cracked. Why do you let them treat you like this? You could destroy them. You could what? Yuna looked up. Her eyes were heavy. Kill them? Break them? Become what I was? She shook her head. I spent 20 years trying to bury that woman. I will not dig her up for a fool like Drell. Bora sat down beside her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I still dream about it, Bora finally said. The mountain. The pass. The screaming. I know. Do you dream about it too? Yuna did not answer, but her silence was answer enough. Bora took her hand. The hand with missing fingers holding the hand with white scars. Two survivors of something terrible. Two women who had seen too much. Some ghosts do not stay buried, Yuna, Bora whispered. You know that better than anyone. Yuna closed her eyes. Outside, the station hummed its endless song. And somewhere in the dark, old memories stirred like beasts waking from sleep. Taeho found Bora in a small bar near the docking bay. She was drinking alone, staring at a glass of dark liquid. Her eyes were far away, lost in memories. He sat down across from her without asking permission. You know her, he said. Yuna, you know who she really is. Bora looked at him. Her gaze was sharp despite the drink. And who are you? My name is Taeho. I am an engineer. I have been trying to help her, but she refuses. And I found her file. It was classified. Everything was classified. For good reason. Please. Taeho leaned forward. I need to understand. That Vet Drell, he is going to hurt her badly one day. And she just accepts it. Why? Why does she not fight back? Bora was quiet for a long moment. She took a drink, set down the glass. Then she spoke. Have you ever heard of the Battle of Horizon's Edge? Taeho nodded slowly. Everyone had heard of it. It was the most famous battle of the war. The most terrible. The Vec had us cornered, Bora said. It was year 27 of the war. They had broken through our main fleet. They were heading for Earth. Nothing could stop them. We were going to lose everything. She paused. Her hand tightened around her glass. There was a planet in their path. A small world called Horizon's Edge. It had a mountain pass that the Vake army needed to cross. And someone had to hold that pass. Someone had to buy time for our fleet to regroup. The 7th Assault Division? Taiho whispered. Bora nodded. 14 soldiers. That is all we had. 14 against 10,000 Vek warriors. We were supposed to hold for 2 days. Just 2 days, and then reinforcements would come. How long did you hold? 9 days. Taiho's breath caught. 9 days. 14 soldiers against an army. It should have been impossible. The Vek came in waves, Bora continued. Day and night. They never stopped. We fought in the mud and the blood and the rain. We used guns until we ran out of bullets. We used knives until the blades broke. We used rocks and bare hands and teeth. Her voice grew hollow. One by one, we fell. By day 5, there were only 6 of us left. By day 7, only 3. By day 9, ... only 1, Taiho finished. Only 1. Bora looked at him with haunted eyes. When the reinforcements finally arrived, they found a single soldier standing in that pass. The ground around her was covered with bodies. Hundreds of Vek warriors. She was drenched in so much blood that she looked red, like she was made of blood. The soldiers who found her said she did not speak. She did not react. She just stood there, holding a broken knife, staring at nothing. The Red Ghost, Taiho said. He had heard the name before. It was a legend among humans. A nightmare among Vek. The Red Ghost of Horizon's Edge. The woman who could not be killed. That is what the Vek called her, Bora confirmed. They still tell stories about her. They use her name to frighten their children. To them, she is a monster, a demon. And that woman is Yuna. Bora did not answer. She did not need to. Taiho sat back. His mind was spinning. The quiet maintenance worker. The woman who fixed pipes and never spoke. She was the Red Ghost. She was the most decorated soldier in human history. She was a legend made flesh. Why does she hide? He asked. Because she is tired. Bora finished her drink. Because she has seen too much death. Because every time she closes her eyes, she sees the faces of the people she killed, and the faces of the friends she could not save. She stood up. Leave her alone, young man. She has earned her peace. But Taiho could not leave it alone. He went to Captain Hyun-woo and told him everything. Hyun-woo listened with a face like stone. When Taiho mentioned the 7th Assault Division, Hyun-woo's hand began to shake. If she is who you say she is, Hyun-woo said slowly, then that Vek has been poking a sleeping dragon. And dragons do not stay asleep forever. The next day, Drell pushed things too far. He cornered Yuna in the cargo bay. It was a large space filled with crates and shadows. No one else was around. Just Yuna and Drell and the hum of machines. But this time, Drell was not alone. He had a weapon. A ceremonial blade, long and curved, with an edge that gleamed in the dim light. It was the kind of blade Vek warriors used for ritual combat, for killing with honor. I have been thinking, Drell said. He walked toward Yuna slowly, the blade hanging at his side. You do not react like other humans. You do not cry. You do not beg. You just stand there like a statue. Yuna watched him approach. Her body was still. I think you are broken inside, Drell continued. I think the war took your soul, left you empty. He raised the blade and pressed it against her throat. The edge was cold and sharp. Your kind should have been wiped out. Maybe I should finish what we started. One human at a time. For a long moment, nothing happened. Yuna did not move, did not speak. The blade pressed harder against her skin. Then something changed. Yuna's eyes shifted. They rose to meet Drell's gaze. And what he saw there made his blood go cold. Those were not the eyes of a broken woman. Those were not the eyes of prey. Those were the eyes of something ancient and terrible. Something that had waded through oceans of blood. Something that had killed hundreds without flinching. Drell felt fear. Real fear. For the first time since the war, he felt like prey himself. A moment passed. Drell laughed nervously and lowered the blade. "Pathetic," he said, but his voice was weak. He turned and walked away quickly, trying to hide how his hands were shaking. Yuna stood alone in the cargo bay. Her hands were trembling too, but not from fear. They trembled from the effort of holding back, from the strain of keeping the monster inside its cage. Memories flooded through her. The mountain pass. The endless waves of enemies. The screaming that never stopped. The feel of her blade cutting through flesh and bone. The blood, so much blood, until she could not remember what it felt like to be clean. She pressed her palms against her eyes. "Not again," she whispered. "I do not want to be that person again." But the past was not finished with her. Suddenly, alarms began to scream throughout the station. Red lights flashed in every corridor. A cold voice echoed from the speakers. "Alert! Alert! Hostile fleet detected. Vec Raider ships entering the sector. All personnel prepare for emergency protocols." Yuna lowered her hands. The fear and pain faded from her face. Something else took its place. Something hard. Something cold. Something that had been sleeping for 20 years. She walked to a viewport and looked out into space. In the distance, she could see them. A fleet of ships, dark and angular, bearing the marks of the rogue Vec, raiders who had rejected the peace treaty. Killers who lived only for blood and glory. They were coming. And there was nowhere to run. Around her, people screamed and fled. Humans and Vec alike scrambled for shelter. Panic spread like fire, but Yuna did not panic. She stood at the viewport, still and silent, watching the enemy approach. And slowly, very slowly, a cold smile touched her lips. The dragon was waking up. The first explosion tore through the station like thunder. The floor shook. Lights flickered and died. In the darkness, people screamed. The raider fleet had arrived. Their ships surrounded Kepler-9 like wolves circling a wounded animal. Small attack craft launched from the larger vessels, carrying boarding parties. The raiders were not here to negotiate. They were here to kill Dot in the security center. Captain Hyun-woo shouted orders to his small force. They were a mix of humans and loyal Vic, barely 50 soldiers to defend a station of 10,000 people. It was not enough. It would never be enough. "They have breached the outer hall in Sectors 7 and 12, someone called out. "Hostiles are inside the station." Hyun-woo gripped his rifle. His old wounds ached. He was too old for this. But there was no one else. "All units, fall back to the inner corridors," he commanded. "Protect the civilian shelters. Do not let them reach the reactor core." Another explosion. Closer this time. The lights died completely, replaced by the dim red glow of emergency power. Hyun-woo turned to lead his soldiers. Then he stopped. A figure stood in the doorway. A woman in a gray maintenance uniform. Her face calm, her eyes empty. "Yuna." "Get to shelter," Hyun-woo said. "This is no place for. Give me your sidearm." Her voice was quiet, but there was something in it that made Hyun-woo pause. It was the voice of command, the voice of someone who had given orders in the heart of battle. "Who are you?" he demanded. Yuna stepped closer. In the red light, her scars seemed to glow. Someone who should have stayed dead. "Now give me the weapon, Captain." and get your wounded to safety. I will handle this." Hyunwoo stared at her. He remembered what Taiho had told him. The 7th Assault Division. The Red Ghost. The woman who held a mountain pass against 10,000 enemies. He unholstered his pistol and handed it to her. Yuna took it, checked the magazine, and moved toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. "If I do not come back," she said, "tell people I was just a maintenance worker. That is all I ever wanted to be." Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkness. The raiders moved through the station like a plague. They were rogue Vek, larger and more savage than the ones who had accepted peace. Their scales were decorated with the bones of their victims. Their weapons were stained with old blood. They killed everyone they found, human and Vek alike. A squad of 6 raiders advanced through a narrow corridor. They were laughing, drunk on violence, eager for more prey. They did not see the shadow moving behind them. The first raider died without a sound. One moment he was walking, the next he was falling, a knife buried in his throat. The second raider turned, confused, and a bullet punched through his skull. The third and fourth died before they could raise their weapons. The last 2 raiders spun around, finally understanding the danger. They saw a small human woman standing over the bodies of their comrades. Her face was spattered with blood. Her eyes were cold and empty. They roared and charged at her. Yuna moved Dot. It was not human movement. It was something faster, something smoother, something terrible. She flowed between them like water, her blade flashing in the dim light. One raider fell, his chest opened. The other grabbed his throat as blood poured through his fingers. Yuna stood among the bodies. Her breathing was slow and steady. Her hands did not shake Dot. This was what she was. This was what she had always been. She continued deeper into the station. Dot in a side corridor. Taiho and a group of humans had taken shelter behind a barricade of cargo crates. They were not soldiers. They were engineers and workers and traders. They had whatever weapons they could find. They were terrified. The raiders were coming. They could hear the heavy footsteps, the cruel laughter, the screams of people dying. "We are going to die," someone whispered. "There are too many of them." Taiho gripped his makeshift weapon, a metal pipe. His hands were shaking. He thought about his family back on Earth. He thought about all the things he would never do. Then the screaming stopped. The footsteps stopped. Everything went silent. Ho peered over the barricade. In the corridor beyond, he saw raiders lying on the ground. 5, 6, 7 bodies. All dead. All killed in seconds. And standing among them was Yuna. She was covered in blood. Her gray uniform was torn and stained. A knife hung from one hand, a pistol from the other. She looked at the survivors, and her voice was calm. "If you want to live, follow me. If you want to hide, stay here and pray." No one hesitated. They followed. Yuna led them through the station, cutting a path through the raiders. She moved with terrifying efficiency. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Every shot found its mark. Every cut was fatal. Taiho watched her fight. He had seen soldiers before, but nothing like this. She was not fighting. She was killing. There was a difference. Soldiers fought to survive. Yuna killed because it was what she was made to do. They reached a junction and found Bora waiting with a rifle. The 2 women exchanged a look. No words were needed. Old soldiers recognizing each other. Bora fell into position beside Yuna, and together they led the survivors toward the reactor core. On the command ship of the raider fleet, Warlord Torak received reports from his boarding parties. At first, the reports were good. The station was falling. The defenders were weak. Victory was certain. Then the reports changed. "Warlord, we have lost contact with Squad 7. Squad 12 is not responding. Something is killing our warriors. They are dying before they can fight back. Torok growled. What is killing them? Station security? Vec defenders? A surviving raider's voice crackled over the communication system. He sounded afraid. It is a human, a female. She moves like death itself. Our warriors fall before they can scream. She is covered in blood, warlord. She is covered in our blood. Torok went very still. He was old enough to remember the war. He was old enough to remember the stories. The nightmare that had haunted Vik soldiers for 30 years. The monster that walked like a human, but killed like a demon. The red ghost, he whispered. His officers looked at him with fear. Impossible, one of them said. She died decades ago. She is just a legend. Torok shook his head slowly. Legends do not die. They just wait. He stood up from his command chair. Prepare my transport. I will go to the station myself. Warlord, it is too dangerous. I have waited my whole life to kill the red ghost, Torok said. His eyes burned with hunger. I will not let this chance pass. Back on the station, Drell was hiding. When the attack began, he had abandoned his post. He had fled while others fought. He had shoved humans aside to save himself. Now he crouched in a storage bay, trembling like a frightened child. The mighty warrior who had tormented the weak. The proud Vec who had boasted of human blood. He was nothing but a coward. Through a gap in the door, he watched the battle in the corridor beyond. Raiders charged. Defenders fell. And in the middle of it all, Yuna fought. Drell watched her move. He watched her kill. And finally, he understood what she was. This was the woman he had kicked. The woman he had spat on. The woman he had called prey. She was a monster. She was a legend. She was the red ghost, and she had let him live. Every day she had let him live. Not because she was weak, but because she had chosen not to kill him. Drell looked at his hands. They were shaking. He thought about everything he had done. Every cruelty. Every insult. Every act of cowardice. He thought about the kind of warrior he had wanted to be. The kind of warrior the Vec used to respect. And he made a choice. He stood up. He grabbed a weapon from a fallen raider. And he walked out of the storage bay. If he was going to die, he would die fighting. He would die with honor. He would not be prey anymore. The reactor core was the heart of Kepler-9. If the raiders captured it, they could overload the systems and destroy the entire station. 10,000 lives would be lost in a single explosion. This was where the battle would be won or lost. Yuna led her small band of survivors to the reactor chamber. They were a strange group. Humans and Vik fighting side by side. Workers and soldiers and traders. People who had been enemies now stood together because they had no other choice. Bora took position at the main entrance, her rifle ready. Taiho organized the others, giving them cover positions and escape routes. He was not a soldier, but he was smart and calm under pressure. Yuna stood in the center of the chamber, listening to the sounds of battle echoing through the station. The raiders were getting closer. She could hear their roars, their footsteps, their weapons firing. She looked at her hands. They were covered in blood. Some of it was hers. Most of it was not. For 20 years, she had tried to forget what she was. She had tried to be normal, quiet, invisible. She had buried the red ghost in a shallow grave and walked away. But graves do not hold forever. The dead always rise. A voice came from the entrance. A deep, rumbling voice that carried the weight of age and power. Red ghost. Yuna turned. A massive Vec warrior stood in the doorway. He was taller than Drell, broader than any raider she had killed tonight. His scales were black as night, and his yellow eyes burned with a terrible hunger. He wore the marks of a warlord on his body, scars from 100 battles, bones from 1,000 kills. Torek had come. "I have waited 30 years for this," he said. He stepped into the chamber, a great curved blade in his hands. "I was young during the war. I fought in the campaign against your world. I heard the stories about you, the monster in the mountains, the demon who could not die." Yuna said nothing. She shifted her stance, her knife ready. "I have killed many humans," Torek continued, "but never a legend, never a ghost." His lips pulled back in a savage grin. "When I bring your head to my people, I will be remembered forever." Torek the Ghost Slayer, Torok the Demon Killer. "Many have tried to kill me," Yuna said quietly. "They are all dead." Torek laughed. "Then I will succeed where they failed." He attacked. The battle was brutal. Torek was strong and fast and skilled. He had been fighting since before Yuna was born. His blade cut through the air like a living thing, seeking her flesh. But Yuna was something else. She moved like water, like shadow, like death itself. She had been forged in the fire of the worst war humanity had ever known. She had been broken and remade and broken again. She had survived things that would destroy any normal person. They fought across the reactor chamber. Blade met knife in showers of sparks. Blood flew from cuts on both sides. The survivors watched in terrified awe as two warriors battled at the peak of their deadly arts. Torek was stronger. He was fresher. He had not spent the night fighting through an army. But Yuna had something he did not. She had 30 years of rage, 30 years of grief, 30 years of memories that burned like fire in her veins. Every friend she had lost, every enemy she had killed, every night she had woken screaming from dreams of blood, all of it poured through her now. She found an opening. Her knife slashed across Torak's chest, cutting deep. He roared in pain and swung his blade wildly. She ducked under it and drove her knee into his wounded chest. Torek stumbled back. Blood poured from his wound. But he did not fall. He raised his blade for another attack. Yuna was faster. She moved inside his guard and plunged her knife into his throat. The blade went deep, severing everything important. Torak's eyes went wide. His blade fell from his hands. He collapsed to his knees, choking on his own blood. But somehow, impossibly, he smiled. "Finally," he gasped. "A worthy death. A death at the hands of a legend." Yuna stood over him, her knife raised for the killing blow. One more strike, and it would be over. One more life added to the thousands she had already taken. But she hesitated. She looked at her reflection in Torak's blood-filled eyes. She saw herself, covered in gore, face twisted with violence. A monster wearing human skin. Was this who she was? Was this all she would ever be? Slowly she lowered the knife. "The war is over," she said. "I will not let you drag me back into it." She turned away. Behind her, Torek laughed weakly. "You will always be a killer. It is what you are." Yuna stopped. She did not turn around. "Maybe," she said, "but I get to choose who I kill. And you are not worth the stain on my soul." Torak's laughter faded into silence. His body slumped to the floor. The warlord was dead. Without their leader, the remaining raiders lost their will to fight. Station security, reinforced by the survivors Yuna had rallied, pushed them back. Within hours, the last raiders had been killed or captured. The battle was over. Reinforcements arrived from a nearby military outpost. Soldiers and medics flooded the station. The wounded were treated. The dead were counted. The damage was assessed. It was bad. Many had died. But it could have been worse. Much worse dot in the cargo bay, they found Yuna. She was sitting on a crate, surrounded by bodies. Her uniform was torn and soaked with blood. Her face was empty. Her hands rested on her knees, still holding the knife she had carried since the war. Taiheo approached her carefully. He did not know what to say. What words could possibly be enough? He sat down beside her on the crate. For a long time, they said nothing. They just sat together in the silence. Finally, Yuna spoke. I spent 20 years trying to forget who I was. Trying to be normal, quiet, invisible. She looked at her scarred hands. But you cannot bury what is in your blood. Is that a bad thing? Taihao asked softly. Yuna did not answer. A week later, the station was beginning to heal. Repairs were underway. People were returning to their lives. The dead were mourned, and the living moved on. Captain Hyun-woo called a gathering in the main concourse. Humans and Vec stood together, united by the battle they had survived. Hyun-woo stood on a platform, his arm in a sling, and spoke. Many of you are wondering about the woman who saved this station, he said. She asked me to say nothing. She wanted to remain invisible. He paused. But some deeds cannot be hidden. Some heroes must be known. He turned to face Yuna, who stood at the edge of the crowd. Sergeant Major Yuna, of the 7th Assault Division, he announced. Sole survivor of the Battle of Horizon's Edge, recipient of the Crimson Star, humanity's highest military honor. The woman called the Red Ghost. A murmur swept through the crowd. Humans stared with wonder. Vec lowered their heads in reluctant respect. Even those who had hated humans could not deny what Yuna had done. Drell stepped forward. He was wounded, bandaged, but alive. He had fought beside the humans in the final hours. He had found his courage when it mattered. He stopped in front of Yuna. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Drell raised his fist to his chest. A Vec salute. The highest sign of respect one warrior could give another. Yuna returned the salute without expression. No words were spoken. None were needed. Months passed. The station returned to normal. Ships came and went. People lived their small lives. The battle became a story, then a memory, then a legend. And in the lower decks, a woman named Yuna fixed pipes. Taio found her there one day, working on a broken conduit. She wore the same gray uniform. Her hands were the same rough and scarred hands. She moved with the same quiet efficiency. You could leave, Taio said. After what you did, they would give you anything. A command, a ship, a planet. Yuna tightened a bolt. I have had glory. I have had battle. I have had blood. She looked at him, and for the first time, there was something like peace in her eyes. Now I just want quiet. Is that so hard to understand? Taihao smiled. No, I think I am starting to understand. He reached into his tool bag and pulled out a wrench. He knelt beside her and began working on the next section of pipe. Yuna watched him for a moment. Then, slowly, a small smile touched her lips. The first real smile in 20 years. They worked together in silence. The station hummed around them. Life went on. Somewhere above, stars burned in the endless dark. Wars had been fought beneath those stars. Heroes had been made and broken. Legends had been born in blood and fire. But down here, in the quiet of the lower decks, a woman who had been a monster was learning to be human again. And that, perhaps, was the greatest battle of all.